All right. So welcome to those who are watching the recording. We are talking today about language. We're a small group and we've all agreed to have sort of a collaborative conversation that others can listen to and enjoy after the fact. I'm going to begin by what I always forget, which is putting in the chat the link to sign up for the emails that we send out, which give information about upcoming cafes, and it always has the link for you right there to join in. So do please feel free to sign up for that if you would like to. Okay, so even in our little conversation before, there's already new ideas coming up. So I'm going to begin this by saying that I decided to do this conversation because of how language hit me one day. And I don't know if you've seen that or not, but I did write about it in part of the Facebook post that I was using. I have a fear of cross-country skiing down hills. And I'm often out skiing in the forest with my husband, who's an amazing skier, and he just goes down them and dances down and looks great and gets to the bottom and he is super patient and understands where I'm at. But it occurred to me the other day when he called back up, oh, don't worry, this is an easy one. That him telling me that it was easy made it harder for me, because all of the oh my gosh, I really should be able to do this. Why am I so scared? It triggered all this stuff in me, which was so far from what his intent had been. And it just got me thinking. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized what a huge topic this is. So I'm coming into this today from a personal experience that's caused me then to start reflecting on my language experiences as a parent, and with the parents that I support through the consulting that I do, what they report, and then with the teens that I mentor, how they then talk about language instances and how that feels for them. And we're not going to come anywhere close to solving the world's language conundrums in this particular 45 minutes that we have left. But I think we can have some interesting conversations around it. So what I would like to do is just toss a couple of questions out there. I'm going to say a whole bunch of phrases that came into my head as I was preparing for this. And I'm just going to throw them out there to get us thinking about what are the kinds of things that we say. And then I'll share some thoughts on my attempt to bring more intentionality around this. And then I'll open it up to all of you. Okay, so if the goal is to bring more awareness so that we can be more intentional, then I think one of the things is to think about what is my role generally in this relationship, this person that I'm having a conversation with, and what is my role in this moment. So when we get into, oh, this is my kid, I'm the parent, I've got to make sure that I prepare them to be independent, contributing members of society. And that's a very different energy than, I'm talking to my partner who's standing at the top of the ski hill scared, or I'm talking to the person, in line at the grocery store. So what is your role in that situation? And I think it's really interesting to double check what you think that role requires you to do. Because I think when we're in that, I'm in a teaching or a parenting kind of role, we hold this responsibility, of course, because that's, we want our kids to be wonderful and happy and healthy, and we have responsibilities to do with that. And at the same time, that sense of responsibility and that sense of, it's up to me to show them or to get them to do this or to praise them for doing this, that can also then result in us using words that have a detrimental effect. We talked about that a little bit in advance as far as the PDA. I think learning about PDA and how language plays into that is such an eye-opener to language in any context. And in case people aren't aware, there's somebody in South Africa called Jana Clements. I just put her name in the chat. She works in the field of self-directed learning and schooling, and she's doing an awful lot of research and presenting this around PDA right now. She's brilliant, and she offers a course which I've taken. Sydney, I think you may have taken it as well. I certainly learned a lot through her. And one of the things that that she says is, if you can create a situation or a language pattern that works for a PDAer, as she describes somebody in that situation, that language will probably work for anyone, or that situation will probably work for anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I really love that notion. So I really invite you to check out Yana. There's lots of her stuff on YouTube. You can get in touch with her through her website and see what's going on there as well. So that's one thing. So some of the phrases that popped into my head as I was thinking about this, and these are things that, you know, we say to kids, or we say to others, kids or adults sometimes. The first one I gave with the example of, this is easy. This is a hard one. You'll love this. You should know this by now. We did this before, remember? And then when I was at Teachers College, I remember being taught by the profs that we should tell the kids in our class to ask 3, then me. Meaning, don't go and ask the teacher if you have a question. Go and ask 3 classmates before you ask the teacher. Ask 3, then me. And I just started thinking about that and more. Don't cry, it's okay. It's no big deal. Don't worry about it. And then in a classroom context, this is a must do. Wait your turn. I know you can do better. Or often to adults, have you lost weight? You look awesome. Often to kids, try harder. It's not that hard. Don't be lazy. Or almost the opposite. You've got this. You can do it. Don't waste my time. You're wasting your time right now. School comes first. Homework, then play. Always do your best. Always do your best. Or the ones that start to get tricky because they feel positive. I'm proud of you. Or sometimes just not using language when we could be using language. So think about changing a young child's diaper, or putting gloves on a child, or putting their clothes on them and just doing it while we're like talking to somebody else. And some of the phrases that came to my mind as perhaps helpful phrases, or more phrases that perhaps connect rather than run the risk of disconnecting. Is there something I can do to help? What do you need right now? And then that phrase that we so rarely remember to ask our kids, what do you think? Or I really appreciate when you, and as an authentic, I appreciate, not one of those like quasi, I really like it when you clean your room, when really what you're trying to say is, would you clean your room? So true appreciation. I appreciate how kind you were to your friend just then. I really saw in her eyes that made something for her. And then as simple as thank you, like a true thank you. Would it work for you if, and one that blew me away when I had a meeting with a family who the teen was needing to leave school, and the family was feeling really, really, really lost. But the mom said about 3 times during the meeting, "But I trust my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
I trust her." And it was like through all the chaos, all the heightened emotions and the fears and the anger and all of that, this phrase just cut right through. I trust you. And then the words are, there is space for you to be you. And I don't think those are words that we say to anyone, but I wonder about how we show those words. I believe in you. And then I think an interesting reflective piece is, would I say this to a friend? So if you say something to your child or to a teacher or to a student or whatever the context is, and to ask yourself, would I say this to a friend? It doesn't necessarily mean that if you wouldn't say it to a friend, you shouldn't have said it to your child, but it's an interesting way of shining a lens of clarity on what you've just said and helping you to see what your intentions may have been or may have come across as. And then I think in the midst of all of this is an idea that when our kids or the kids that we're with or adults that we're with, in the case of me and my paralysis at the top of a ski hill, the other person can be that solid center. So when I'm at the top of that hill and like about to cry because I'm so scared and all of that, but I know that the person I'm with is calm, is just being there and being solid, I know that I've got a center to come back to. And I think that's really key for kids as well. And I think our language is an important piece in that. When our language supports the notion that we are the solid center that they can come back to, they can go and do their thing. They can have a meltdown. They can be excited about something and they know that there's a secure center to come back to. And we talked a little bit about the idea of language as expectations. Again, when that feeling of expectations is there, it's like we're leaving the solid center and going into their space, like trying to make it be a certain way. It's that kind of energy. So if we can remember to stay in that solid center, then we might even just automatically change our language around expectations. I think also the idea of, we mentioned the idea of language as a lack of belief, that it's easy to show a lack of belief with our words. And again, if we can hold that image of, I am a solid center that they can come back to as they need to, then our language can keep us there as well. And it's that language of trust. So I'm starting to go into like exploring, but I'm remembering, I was driving with my daughter. She's 18, she has her driver's license, and I told her to change lanes because I knew that we were going to get stuck in traffic if she didn't change lanes. And she was so upset that I had told her to change lanes because it demonstrated a lack of belief in as she heard it from me. And so it is that sense of how do you use that language to keep the center and to keep two distinct people in a conversation, a conversation, a conversation. I'm going to stop talking there. I'm curious to hear where your thoughts are now that I've sort of opened up where these questions took my brain. Jump in any way, take us any direction that you want to with asking more questions, sharing expertise, wherever this puts you.
I certainly agree that there's that element of trust that you're trying to share with someone and that belief in them. And I'm thinking a lot about my preteen at the moment. And, especially she's in school and I have an unschooler at home. I have that, well, where am I with her? Because she has to get up in the morning. She has homework to do. She has attendance at school to think about. And how does that change my parenting if I don't want to be setting bedtimes all the time? I don't want to be making her go to bed so that she gets sleep because she's getting up when I have someone else who isn't at school and actually I'm letting her find her rhythm and find when she wants to go to sleep. So I'm finding myself having, and I've said a few times, I trust you to get the sleep you need for when you get up. And I've realized that is the important thing in our relationship at the moment, is not, whilst every fiber of me is feeling like, I should be setting boundaries and teaching her how to be a responsible grown up with incredibly good habits. Actually, I need her to know that I trust her, because she's not going to be interested in me pushing her around and telling her what to do. Sorry, I've gone off on a tangent there, but I just think that trust is so important, and words that can communicate that, as well as saying it outright. There are the words that show we trust them, and there are the words that show we don't.
Yeah.
So when I sit there and sort of make some sarky comment about how she's just plowed through a bag of crisps, or if I raise my eyebrows at the fact that she's still up at midnight, that's going to take away something as well. So it's so hard to keep that going all the time, especially when it's kind of our core beliefs that we're challenging at the same time, and the way that we've been raised.
Yeah.
And in my head, I know what I'm going for, but my programming is not the same, and it doesn't work like that. My programming wants to go, what are you doing up at this time? You got school in the morning.
So what might be some, and it would be interesting to actually take that example and think, what are some words that would help and words that would hinder?
I think telling her I trust her to look after herself and listen to her body,
Yeah.
is quite useful. I actually feel that saying anything at all in her instance will be seen as a judgment. So however I word it, there's that idea that I'm using it as a way to manipulate her into going to bed early. So if I said, oh, you look tired, she's going to take that as a judgment and want to defend her right. No, I'm not tired. I know enough. It's so hard.
But it's interesting, right? Because if you test it with the would I say that to a friend question, like you might say to a friend, oh, you look really tired, but you're saying it with a compassion. You're not saying like, I bet you stayed up late again last night, right? You're showing a compassion, but because it's hard to communicate that to our kids.
Yeah, because I think with the roles that we have, automatically, and the history I have with her and judging her and telling her to go to bed and setting bedtimes, her assumption is that I am talking to her to intervene and to get her to do something. And I don't know whether over time that will get better if she trusts me to not interfere.
I know I've had situations, my kids are 18 and 21, and I've had situations where I've bitten my tongue enough times, and I've realized, oh, one of them has just said something to me that they wouldn't have said had I not bitten my tongue for the last 6 months, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts jumping in on that?
I was just going to add, I think, like you say, you can spend a long time biting your tongue, and then just one little word can set us back to, oh no, I've just let slip, and my whole intention has been revealed.
And it's interesting, right? Because it's like, maybe your intention has been revealed. So as we're biting our tongues, I'm going to take it out of you because it's not you, but as one is biting one's tongue, are we also working to adjust that expectation or that sense that they should be going to bed early? Like, are we letting that? Are we biting our tongue on that as well, like taking that away? Because if that's still there, then as soon as we say anything, it's going to come out. Yeah. And again, maybe that's where that question of would I say this to a friend? Like if you can ask yourself, whatever I'm about to say, could I say this to a friend, and would it be heard neutrally or with compassion or whatever, then maybe that can show us, like, are we ready to say that to our child, or are we still judging and expecting and wishing? And it's really difficult. And I think one of the ways that we can perhaps help that sense of letting go and letting them, like, and truly just trusting them to figure out what sleep means for them, is looking ahead. And Sydney, you might have a reflection on this because your kids are older. So working from, when they're 30 or 40 and they are independent, what is it going to look like then? And how do we make sure that we're planting the seeds for that now, right? Like, if when they're 13, we're anxiously saying, like, this is the time, they already, like, they know that they need to sleep and all of that. So what happens does that give us permission to stop thinking about it or interfering with their timing? Because we know that when they're 30 or 40, we're not going to be thinking about it. So why don't we just stop thinking about it now? Like, sometimes I wonder if that thinking ahead and looking back is a way of letting go.
Yeah, I think so. And actually, the talk you gave at the conference in the summer, I remember you talking about, my children are going to be here in my house for a year, 2 years, and then they're gone and they may never speak to me again. And actually, so do I need to do this? Do I need to be telling them, actually, or do they know? And what's more important, is it that relationship, or is it this sleep routine? And hands down, it's got to be the relationship.
Yeah. And speaking from this vantage point where both of my kids have now moved away for school, and they both choose to come back, thank goodness. That's it really is, like, it's just so clear. Even like my daughter will come back and she'll go out with friends to a bar or whatever, and I'm thinking, like, what time are you coming home? Like, is it safe? And it's so easy for me to tell just to see how pointless that thinking is, because when she's away at school, she's in a way bigger city than we live in, going out, and I don't even know she's out. Like, the juxtaposition of the two is so helpful for me to realize that it's just, like, there's no point in me second guessing or questioning or any of that, other than to say, do you need a ride?
Yeah.
Can I offer a ride? Would you guys like to come back here afterwards? Like, that's helpful. And because there's a positive relationship, you can offer that without it being a judgment. Although it could easily have been a judgment. It was like, do you need a ride? I don't trust that you're not going to drink and drive, right? But it's an honest offer.
Yeah. Really interesting. Yeah, it's definitely that intention, isn't it? Because I think all children, are gauged to pick up an intention from a parent if there's an agenda. But some children are absolutely on it.
Yes.
And will spot it a mile off.
And so then almost the most important thing we can do as parents, while holding this space that's needed for our kids to be safe, the most important thing we can do is release them into their autonomy as much as they want it, which is what comes back then to language. Because I'm curious about the words, the positive words that we use. Praise. I mean, praise is such a tricky one, right? Like, good job. Like, what could possibly be wrong with it? But I think it can get in the way of a lot. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on positive language that might go amiss.
I'm really struck by the notion that there has to be so much feedback to the child about their world and their behavior. when if we want them, what we want them to do is to self-regulate, then they need as much space as they can possibly get to try out how to do that. And it seems to me that the best way we can support that is to give them the modeling of our own dealing with self-regulation. So we're talking about how tired we are because we did such and such, and we've got to get up in the morning and do whatever. So we're going to bed now, meaning I am, and the reasons why I'm doing that. Because in the end, all of that feedback, unless it's asked for, is really confusing.
True.
I think.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's almost like we don't have to figure out how to say all these things in response to them, when in fact they haven't asked for that.
Yeah.
So leave them alone. Tell them we love them and tell them what we're doing and whatever. So when I heard this topic, as I told, what's your name? Stephanie. That's 73 years old speaking, sorry.
All good.
I drew a blank and I realized that part of it was from sort of a fear, because I don't even remember going through these trials and tribulations of what to say to my kids. But what I hold inside of myself is the notion that I believed for so long that they should have their own space and be trusted to have their own lives, that I sort of had to rely on my own unconscious intuition about how to talk to them. And every time I come up against some really great teaching, like Yana Clements or anybody else telling me how to talk to kids, I get terrified that it'll be the same thing like tennis. Whenever I get a tennis lesson, I play worse than I did before. Because I become so self-conscious of what it is I'm doing. I don't let my body come through and just do what's natural. So I think that the drawing a blank was a cover-up for being afraid of this whole subject. So it's interesting to hear people talking about it, because it makes me scared. But I might say the wrong thing.
I do wonder whether it's something about modern parenting and the very fact that we call it parenting and
Right.
talk about it, and just I think this feeling that we are responsible for how our children turn out and that we can therefore control them, because if we do the wrong thing, this will go wrong for them, and similarly if we do the right thing, then everything will subsequently go right for them. And ultimately we don't actually have as much control as we like to think we do, or that we're told we do. But I think we take on so much responsibility for everything I say and do is going to impact my child's future and well-being, that we stress over getting it right, and we do interfere. And as you say, I think we don't trust that children will actually find their way with us there, keeping them safe and providing, the right opportunities or providing that space. But yeah, that maybe less is more.
Yeah, the rise of that word parenting is a big indicator of something that didn't used to happen.
Yeah. And when my mum's always saying to me, like, oh, I never had any of these books or any of this advice or any whatever. And I was fine. And, I might beg to differ and suggest that maybe some of it might have been useful for you, Mum. But on the whole, I think just that whole turning this into it feels like as a parent, you are judged, or one is judged on everything. Everything that comes out of your child's mouth is your responsibility. Everything they do and don't achieve is your responsibility. And I think we're quite mistaken there. But I think it puts pressure on parents to try and that's where a lot of that anxiety comes from, that might lead to us praising them, encouraging them, pushing them, when they might actually be better served by us leaving them alone.
So what would be language that we could use to help us create that space for our kids to be themselves? So for example, if you're in a situation where you feel like somebody's judging you because, or angry with you because of something your child said, what are words we can use to try to open up that space, so it's not on us, but it's our child, but we're still there with them, like keeping them or being safe with them or whatever it is. Like, we're not abandoning them to a bad situation, obviously, but yeah, how can we explain that to others?
I mean, like when one of my neighbors complained to me that my young son had taught his young daughter the F word. It's like, yeah.
Well, I'm having almost the opposite. I'm remembering a situation where my neighbor's child, maybe I shouldn't tell this story just in case. Okay, no, I feel like I shouldn't tell the story. I'm not going to tell the story. But a situation where I wished that more responsibility had been taken by the parent. Like but I'm thinking back, like that was a long time ago, and I might look differently at that now through this lens. I don't know. I'd have to think about it afterwards, how I would react differently to that situation now. But yeah, I'm wondering what words are that can explain this, like unparenting to in contexts where that's not expected.
It seems like you're giving your child space to explore his or her existence, brings its own feedback from the world. And if you try to control it in advance, then it doesn't allow the same opportunity for learning from the environment,
There's a magic phrase that's, we've put our children into forest school, and my husband is also taking the training, and they're really like teaching kids to explore their limits, and and the magic phrase that they're often using is that, do you have a plan? Like, and it can refer to like going to bed, like, do you have a plan? Right? Like, or I'm thinking of my son. It was my son's birthday yesterday, and he can get quite obsessive sometime, and he got this toys, and I knew that this morning he would wake up. He goes to this little alternative school 2 days a week, and I knew he wouldn't want to go to school to stay and play with his toys. And so, last night we made up, okay, what's the plan? It's this Lego set, and there's like different, anyway. So, okay, we're going to build, today we're building this part of the set, tomorrow this part. So after school, and because we made a plan, like this morning was not an issue. But like, so it's like, if there's no plan, what do you need in order to make it? Like, it's like, we have like fire, like there's a fire plan, emergency plan in our home, right? Like, it's not the time to know where you're going to get out when there's a fire. When there's a fire, you want to have a plan before. So and we know with kids, like there's certain things that are going to come up through their life that might cause tension or friction or challenges. So, and it's not like you're not like pointing your fingers, like, have you done that? Or it's just like, do you have a plan? Like, your child's going out tonight, like what's the plan after? Like, how are you going to get home? But I mean, it changed. I have little kids, so but like, really, and I starting this with them, like they can start being aware. Oh, maybe I need to think that through, before I do something, because children are really impulsive, right? Like, and you want to build that impulse control. I mean, I'm not expecting my 3 years old to have a plan. Like, that's an unrealistic expectation, right? But to just like having that language, starting that language early and modeling it too, like, and going back to your values, like for me, health is important, like well-being is an important value. So, I'll say that out loud, something to my children. Oh, my friend called me to, go out tonight, but I know that if I'm going to bed late, like I'm not going to be in shape tomorrow and I have this thing that I really want to do. So I'm going to say no, and I'm going to choose to, go to bed early. And so modeling that out loud to young children so they can start to create that awareness. And it goes back to trust, right? The trust that they can make their decision. And I think, Sydney, you said something very important about the self-regulation, right? Like you can't trust if you're not regulated. Like trust disappear when you're not regulated, right? And Kate, you also said that often what comes out of our children, we see it. So like we often see our children's behavior as a direct reflection of our parenting, but their behavior is a direct reflection of their nervous system. Like, are they regulated or not? Are they in a place where they can trust and think and make a plan? Or, right, just like impulse control, or like impulsively do something or not think it through. But yeah, it's
Hearing you're talking about deciding not to go out that night and because you have to get up early, I'm thinking there's no reason why we can't share that question with our kids and have them help us decide what we're going to do.
absolutely.
As opposed to just planning their lives for them, get their help so they can see what the process is like, making a decision about the plan.
Yeah.
And I think that's coming back to the authenticity piece, right? Like that, I always get a bit nervous when we talk about modeling, like it's so important. And it makes me nervous because it crosses very easily from I'm modeling as in I'm just like living my normal life versus I'm doing this intentionally to teach you something, which can then start to feel like that
Right.
interference and overparenting and all of that. So like it's almost like maybe it's when we intentionally model where it's dodgy. When we can look back and go, oh, I modeled that. When it's like just an observation from the outside, then it's less
I hear you, Stephanie. I think we should give up the word modeling along with the word parenting.
Yeah.
Because
we're living.
Well, I think you're right, Andrea. It's like we're just living.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it might even be like, so do you have a plan makes sense with we're living, but if it's laced with the judgment, which I know is not what you were saying, but like, so in a forest school context, it's like, okay, I'm going to go, hike to the fort in the middle of the forest. Okay, well, do you have a plan for not getting lost? Like that's a safety thing, right? But it's just they're words to be aware of as well, I think.
Yeah.
I think co-living and that, Sydney, the idea of asking your kids to help you decide something, like it can be, I want to go out tonight, but I know I'm going to have a hard time getting up to get you to forest school in the morning, and we might wind up being a few minutes late, or like, it's tricky though, because then the child starts feeling like, well, like I feel guilty because you're not going out, but I think that like using words authentically and being in our authentic place rather than being in parenting mode can be just a way of checking, are these the words I want to be using right now?
I think definitely there's something there about, that being authentic and not modeling deliberately, but that, we're just living alongside each other so that you can learn from me. And I wish I'd done all this stuff before I'd become a parent, rather than falling into that I'm parenting trap. But why don't we trust kids so much? Why do we feel like, I mean, I've got the whole social media thing that I worry about my kids online. Why don't I trust that my child isn't going to be tempted to bully as a first, a first instinct? Why can't I trust that she'll scroll past things that she thinks are a bit dodgy? It's that feeling that we must do it for them. And I know where the fear's coming from, but it's actually quite crippling sometimes. And I think it gets in the way of that relationship, because all the while we're afraid of what will happen to them, with them, we're saying, I'm afraid because I don't trust you to live life right or make good decisions. And actually, they probably will make good decisions most of the time, and is our job to be there for when it goes a bit wrong, rather than keep trying to forestall them from doing anything wrong in the first place.
I think I have two thoughts in my head based on what you said. And one is that so many of us do pass through phases in our lives of not making good decisions. And it's like, I had no idea how hard it was going to be as a parent to have to like ride the wave of that, rather than like be able to do something about it all the time. That's one thing. But I think it is very true that, stepping back, and sometimes it's great when they move out and you just don't know. It's so much easier. But I think that question of why can't I trust? That's an interesting one when we start to think about asking them questions, like the what do you think question. Like, why am I not trusting that my child is going to scroll past? The way to find out why you're not trusting, or to show yourself that you can trust, is to find out more about who they are. And I think that's the thing, like this whole like parenting gets in the way of us just knowing who our kids are.
Because they start to hide it. They're going to hide it from us, because
Totally.
And my daughter will tell me straight out, it's like, I'd never tell you, Mum, because you judge me.
Yeah.
Okay, right, that's a lesson. Yep.
And if we think about our dear friends and the people, our colleagues that we respect, they do things that might not always be with our values, or we're like, really, you did that? But we just ride the wave of it, right? It's just is. And because we're so intent on properly parenting and taking full responsibility and making sure that, and the phrase however you want to, it's hard for us to let our kids have that space. Something you were saying, like the space for them to self-regulate, and for us to therefore be able to just intuitively engage with them, instead of this thinking like, how do I get them to stop doing that? What's the rule I should put in place? What's the boundary? Like it's crazy making. And when we do have moments of stepping back from that, and I know, like the other day I found this like a charcoal drawing that my daughter had done of a horse, and she probably did it when she was like 9 or something, and she's 18 now. And I just looked at it and was like, it made me feel it's so beautiful. And I could see so much of who she is in this beautiful picture that she'd drawn. And it reminded me of like, oh yeah, like it doesn't always have to be like each moment to moment, and what are you doing today? And it's like, who are you? And that love that we think, we know we love our kids, but every now and then it'll like, I find so, because they've left and they've come back, so I'll sort of see them like that feeling of love, like it's so overwhelming, and you love their whole being, and that clarity, and within that is space for moments of, do I trust this or not? And like, but that's what's at the heart of it all, like that idea of the relationship. And so when we can get out of the way of all the minutiae and get back into that trust and that love and who are you? And I want to know you. I want to know you. I think that's probably where trust can grow as well.
That I want to know you and I don't want to judge you. I'm not here to find out about you to see if I approve. I'm just here out of curiosity. And I think a lot of those phrases you had at the beginning that you were using, thinking as an adult, if someone said them to me, I would feel judged. I would feel, certainly that one about, have you lost weight? I mean, that for me, that's just such a loaded, you're judging me, you're judging my appearance, you're judging whatever. But all of the phrases, oh, you can do this. Like, excuse me, you don't know. Only me and, this activity know if I can do this or not.
Or if I want to do this in this moment.
Absolutely. Maybe I can't do it right now, or maybe I can, and I don't even know, but how dare you say you can do it? It's that kind of, assumption that you have that knowledge that they don't.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Well, I think, I'm reminded of that saying that your child's intelligence, smartness, whatever, is determined by how much you talk to them when they're little. And if they have the experience of you sharing authentically who you are, what you're going through, then it becomes an example to them. Oh, that's what I can do, is share myself with my mother because she did it with me. And so that's natural. It doesn't have to be something that they have to worry about hiding because you're judging them. It's just, that's what people do, is they share what's going on in their head.
Yeah. Wow. It's an interesting topic, hey? I feel like I'm going to be so much more aware of what comes out of my mouth in the next days and weeks. Thank you both, and to Andrea, who will hopefully get to, it looks like she had a little person come in the background, so hopefully she'll be able to finish off with the recording. Thank you for exploring this with me. And if you have further thoughts on it, it'll be posted in the YouTube channel. So just put them in the comments or message me directly. I'd love to hear whatever comes up for you after the fact as well. Yeah, we're going to talk about language next week as well. This session should have been last week. So we have it this week and this coming Tuesday, and then 2 weeks afterwards as usual. I am completely blanking on the focus of next time's language conversation, but I know I'll be able to find it when I go look on the event listing. And it will come out in the newsletter to everybody. And then the time after that, we're talking about learning a second language in a outside of school context or outside of conventional schooling context. So that's going to be an interesting one as well, for sure. Okay, so Kate, I hope your daughter enjoys her drama class.
Yes, thank you. I'd better go get her. Thank you very much for your time.
Don't abandon her. That's not going to help.
Bye.
Thanks very much. Bye, Kate. And I'm just going to end the recording.